Okay, and the video is running, and since I don't think the fan is gonna stop spinning anytime soon, it's time for another rambling or whatever. And I think you should be fine in terms of sound, since the lav mic should not pick up that sound anyways. So I'm gonna start off with saying one thing. This is pretty much most probably, I am not gonna make any promises, my last video from the US. I'm still for one more week here, and then I can finally get back into my normal groove of making reviews and videos of all kinds of things, and also live streams. I want to get back into the live streams. Not quite sure what kind of ones, but yeah, definitely want to do that. But when I'm saying normal video flow, I'm not quite sure if it will be the same as it was before, because like I said already a while ago, I just did way too many videos for the last 2 years, and I want to maybe make a little bit fewer videos, but therefore maybe focus on different parts, maybe make more videos from one device, because I know a lot of YouTubers do this because they maybe don't have so much access to different devices, so they make more videos of one. I personally never was that kind of fan, because I like to put everything into one video. And what I was actually also thinking about, I'm not sure if I will do that, so maybe I will try it for a few times, and then you can let me know if that's actually a good approach or not, because what I'm thinking about doing is maybe a compact video for all those people who just want to really, on a kind of short manner, know everything about the device, or at least the important parts, and then make the normal video that I did before, and maybe even put a little bit more information there, and so make it longer. So a compact one, I would say maybe up to like 5 minutes, because that's actually even still above the attention of most people. That is like 4 minutes or so, at least on my channel on average, and then make a 20-minute video. Obviously, if the device is worthy of putting so much information in it. But let me know what you think about that. I would release both, of course, the same, which would be 4 videos instead of just one for many people, since I make the 2 languages. But yeah, the reason why I'm trying to do this is just because I've noticed that the long videos, no one really watches the whole thing, but the core viewership of mine is still looking exactly for those more detailed information. So if I would just cut down my normal ones, I would lose a lot of the people that want to see those reviews. And if I just make the long ones, I just bore more, and I would maybe have with shorter videos a little bit more access to different kind of viewers. But that's just an idea. Maybe I won't even do it, because it's after all a lot of work to make 4 videos, especially if I make a normal one and an even longer one, which yeah, then would be like at least 50% more length than a normal video. But yeah, I digress. So what's the plan for this video? Since it's my last video, I think I'm gonna just continue where I stopped the last time. And this is actually the weird thing. I made, I think, only one video in the US this time in 3 weeks. That has to do with the fact that I also moved from Florence, Kentucky to pretty much, it's Plymouth, not quite Detroit, Michigan. So there was also a little bit more move, different working environment and so on, and it was a little bit more work, longer working hours, more stress, and I wanted still to see for the last few times that I have the chance, what I can of the US. For example, I was at the Niagara Falls, I was at New York, Manhattan, and I will talk about that also a little bit later, but I just didn't get the time. And actually what I did this time, in contrary to my last time here, I took a little bit of some video gear with me. So I took my A6000 here, in case you're wondering what this is recording with. I took an LED light with, so I get a little bit better light. What I also did this time is I actually took a laptop. It's a review unit from Lenovo, the Yoga 730, the new one. And I asked a colleague that has a cam link, so I can actually use this and just use it with OBS. I hope I am in sync. If not, it would be a little bit too late to find it out right now. But last time I didn't change anything on the sync anyway, so it should be fine. So I have camera set up here, and I wanted to do reviews. Time was a thing, but I also just wasn't happy with the setup here. Especially, I'm limited to this camera view, and I don't make B-rolls, so I couldn't really make the reviews that I wanted to do. The only review that I actually did was about the monoprice M600 and M650, but just because I had to, since they have to be shipped back as long as I'm still in the US. That's the plan. But what is actually coming, for those who are wondering, once everything goes back to normal with the normal review procedure, I got the Mi 8 in the US actually. I'm gonna maybe talk a little bit about that as well. The Xiaomi Mi 8. I will review, I've said that already, the Avento Wireless. Really like them still a lot. Then the BQ Aquarius X2 and X2 Pro are up. I would have almost reviewed them in Germany, just didn't get the time. Didn't really want to review them here. So I know my review, once it's out, it's way too late already. But yeah, I rather make a good review then not a good review. Just to be earlier, I'm not playing the time game anymore, because I know so many of my fellow YouTubers still play, unless you're some super huge one, they play the time game. You need to be the first, and you have the best chances. And I'm not gonna do this anymore, because my videos, if I make them late or if I make them super early, don't really have a big spike or change in kind of viewership. So I'm okay with being a little bit slower than anyways. Otherwise, what else? Yeah, maybe a few other things. So Mi 8, just real quick for those interested, the phone is really nice. It feels great in hand, but the one thing what I don't get is, it's, according to GSM Arena, 0.4 millimeters narrower than the OnePlus 5T, which is absolutely impossible, because if I take both side by side, the Mi 8 is so much narrower. Yes, it's thicker, but it feels so much actually more compact in the hand. Not as thin, obviously, but so much more narrow. And I think I will have to actually from now on maybe measure those things, because just the numbers don't tell you the reality. I don't know where they measured the OnePlus 5T, I don't know where they measured the Mi 8, but no matter how you would do it, if you do it halfway normally, the Mi 8 should be noticeably narrower. I don't know if they made the OnePlus 5T narrower in terms of measurement than what it is in reality, or the other way around, does not matter. The phone itself, speaker is absolutely nice, it's good, but it's nowhere near the 5T, so it's nowhere near as loud, but it gets the job done totally. The display is very nice. I need to bump up the brightness a little bit more. It's usually a calibration thing in terms of brightness from every brand, because usually on Xiaomi device I was at 50-60%, no matter which one. This one I had to use at 70%, so it's not the brightest one, but that's also maybe because it's one of the fewer Xiaomi AMOLED displays, and I needed 70% to get the same brightness as I did on the OnePlus 5T to get the same. I needed on the 5T only 35%. So I'm not quite sure about the maximum brightness, didn't measure it yet, but it's okay. Now, let's talk about the abomination of the notch. And I can't really show the phone since it's still charging up there, but I think that's actually my biggest gripe with this phone. Because what I like over the Xiaomi Mi Mix 2S is just that it feels so much better. The display, due to AMOLED, is a little bit closer to my heart, but this notch is terrible. It's so white and it's so thick, and I will show this in my review. If you actually use the hide notch functionality, you get, besides the notch, 2 millimeters additional for a black bar, so it cuts off the screen even more, so which makes the status bar feel super fat in landscape or in portrait mode, and it looks ugly. And due to the super wide notch, you don't get any information at all on the status bar. You get the time and you get the signal. That's it. No notification. No, and I'm really saying no. That I wasn't aware of that when some others told me that you get no notifications. I thought maybe just less, like only 1 or 2 icons. None. So many times I got a notification but didn't know, because it wasn't visible in any kind unless I dropped down. And on the other side, not even a percentage for the battery. I mean, there was back then even an option to show the battery in terms of percentages inside the battery pill. Not optional anymore. So you lose so much information. So the compromise for the notch that is also super ugly is not worth it. So otherwise, it's a super great phone. Performance is really nice. It's not quite on a 6 level, on a OnePlus 6 level. It just isn't quite as consistent. It has some more stutterings, but I don't have the newest version, so maybe they kinked out a little bit. It's still the normal global Chinese ROM, actually. I didn't switch over to the other one. Software is what it is. By now I have some annoyances. I still like the functionality on its own on MIUI, but what I don't like is the fact that I can't change my DPI, or smaller things are still missing. But yeah, it gets the job done. It's not my first choice, definitely though, anymore. Camera seems really nice. I did my over 200 plus video photos in New York, all with those, and I got only one shot that didn't really satisfy me. It was a shot in the Central Park. It looked completely off, and I don't actually. I think I made that shot by purpose. I think I maybe hit something, because the object that I photographed wasn't something that I wanted to photograph. But all other pictures, super nice and contrasty, detailed, absolutely great. I only saw them on the phone though. I didn't really see them on a monitor yet, but even if I zoom in, really impressive. So I like the cam so far. I think pretty much the microphone will be quite trashy for video anyways, but that's that. Now what else? let's talk about the Niagara Falls. I was there. It was, I think, a 5-hour drive. The first one was 6 because I was stuck 1 hour at the border between Canada and New York. Too much traffic. And I tweeted that I was actually surprised, or I was kind of expecting more from the Niagara Falls in terms of size, and someone told me, oh, that's the typical Damir, always complaining. No, but it's the thing. When I was there, I arrived because I drove quite late, so we could actually see them at night, and then we stayed overnight to see them at noon or daytime. We arrived at, I think, 10 p.m. They seem so small. I don't mean small in terms of small, but I thought that they were on a magnitude of 2 times, 3 times bigger, just from what I've seen usually on pictures and so on. And when you see it actually in reality, yeah, it was cool. It was definitely a nice thing, and the whole trip was interesting to see Canada as well. I was also at Toronto and so on, but I expected more. I expected something way bigger. Obviously, what I didn't see at night was the huge river actually flowing in those from all sides. That was at daytime visible, and that was actually almost more impressive than just the waterfalls. The night spectacle was the smaller town they actually built around it. I wasn't aware of, but it's kind of like a mini Las Vegas or so, but really mini. And that was, so the whole trip was nice, but I don't want to drag this too far. So all I'm gonna say is, it's not something you need to see in your life. It's if you have the possibility, go there if you are close. 4 or 5 hours. That was absolutely worth it. Absolutely. It was something still that you at least once maybe should see if you haven't seen anything similar. But I expected just something way bigger. But I'm not complaining. It was a cool trip. And it worked out good. Now the next bigger trip, I'm not going to talk about something smaller, but New York. Oh, let's talk a little bit before that. Toronto. I was in Toronto. I don't like that city. It's kind of so weird. Everything is obviously underground. Not that obviously when I was there, because when it's winter they have the stores there, because otherwise people wouldn't walk around. So I kind of get that by now. But the city, I did not like the whole. It felt to me like Canada doesn't inform you about anything. You don't get anything explained. When I was at the thing where I park, no real explanation, because it worked a little bit different than somewhere else. And wherever you drove, you did not really see where you have to go, and it just was just the whole country seemed like you get nothing explained. The road trip was also pretty bad there, because speed limit 100 kilometers per hour. That's insanely slow. If you drive on a path that is pretty much 300 kilometers, just straight street without any vegetation, yeah, or anything on the sides, it's first of all boring, but it's super slow. And I don't get why, because the streets were actually quite good. Now let's finish that and talk about the more interesting thing for me, New York. And obviously I didn't see whole New York because my trip was limited, because I only have the weekends, and I'm not someone who spends too much time on one. If I see most of the things, I don't need to try everything, but if I see them, I'm good enough. So what I did is, after work, we drove, me and my brother, I think we drove at, let me think about it. It was it? Yeah, rough, no, was it? Because the trip was a pain in the ass for me, because I worked the day. I took Friday off. So after work at some point, I don't really remember anymore. I think it was, 7 or 8 p.m. we started driving. And since I was awake from the whole day before and after work and so on, usually the trip would have been 10 hours. It took us 14. Because I had to do so many stops of about an hour to sleep, not to drive against a wall or tree or anything. So it took us way longer. The back trip was actually even weirder. And I'm gonna actually talk with that before I'm going into the New York itself. Because what we did is, we spent about 6 hours in New York, Manhattan, Midtown, which is for me more than enough. I've seen the Midtown, I've seen the Central Park, I've seen enough. I was fully satisfied. The trip back then, which I was still pretty much awake from the day before, so I was at that point like 28, 30, I'm way over 30 hours awake, of course, with some smaller sleeping pauses that didn't really help at all. And that trip in entirety took, I think, 16 or 17 hours, but because of some different reasons. So I drove for them, and that was still me being completely pretty much awake from the start. I drove, I think, like 4 hours. Then my battery was low and I had to sleep. I slept 1 hour, and after 5 minutes of driving, I was already very, very tired again. So I kind of finished that drive about an hour later, stopped for an hour again. Then we had to, yeah, something else, I don't know. And I think we drove at that point 6 or 7 hours. I mean, driving time. And we had to fill up the car, and we drove further. And then that's just something I have to explain, because for me that was a shocker. It's not something terrible that happened, but it still baffles me what actually happened, because I had on the car, it said still 260 miles left of fuel to drive. Then we parked. I slept for about an hour, actually quite good, even though I wasn't super awake anymore at that point. Then we started driving again, and like after a minute of driving, my gas gauge said low fuel, you have to stop. And I looked at it and I said, wait, 60 miles left, that can't be, because at that point I had like, I think 100 kilometers left to get to the end, so to get back home. And I thought something doesn't add up, because I had 260 left. And from my calculation, from when I filled up the car, I should have still had about 150 miles left when I arrived. And sorry if I'm doing this, but I think I have a little bit something with my ear that is not okay, because if I talk to myself a little bit louder on some frequencies, I get this annoying little rattling in my ear when I talk myself. It's so super annoying. I think I damaged something. I had this already a little bit before, but it doesn't matter. So something didn't add up, and I thought, okay, I have still 60 miles left, but still, where are about 5 gallons of gas missing? I didn't get it, but okay, I thought, let's fill it up again. But still being confused, I noticed one thing: the car was dropping heavily in terms of gas while driving. So about every mile that I drove, I actually lost 3 miles according to the car. And I got a little bit worried, because I thought I maybe had a puncture in the gas tank or something, or someone I had the weird thinking that someone actually took some gas out while I was sleeping, but that's not the thing. And I barely made it with pretty much no gas left to because what it actually said, it said 7 miles to the next service plaza, but I wouldn't have made it 7 miles at all anymore. So I took the first exit that I could, somewhere in the middle of nowhere, filled up the car. It was pretty much completely empty. Asked if there was an auto repair shop. There wasn't one, but I drove there because, yeah, at least to be somewhere with a filled up gas tank. And I was still baffled, because the car lost, like in 10 miles, about a little bit over 30 miles what it should have actually. So I was completely baffled. So I called Hertz, where I got the car, and they told me I should drive to the nearest Hertz store to replace it. But the weird thing is, from that point, they told me to either get to Toledo, which would have been like 60 miles, or I said if everything actually turns out to be normal again, I will just drive back to Detroit and replace it there. That's what I did. I drove, and for those about 160 kilometers back then, everything seemed fine. The car seemed to have taken a little bit more gas, but it was mostly fine. I had a gallon, I think like 44 miles per gallon, which was normal for the drive, but something just didn't add up. So when I was there, the woman that actually gets the cars, that accepts the car returns, actually asked me if everything was fine. I said yeah. I said yes, and then I actually thought no. and then she said, yeah, but you made it. And I said, yeah, okay, that's the good thing. Everything went out fine. So I got the car replaced. I actually got the way better right now. It's not way better, but I think it's a better car, because what I had before was a Nissan Sentra. Didn't really like that car so much. It was odd in terms of shifting, but because whatever, the car kind of reached the point where it should shift up, it took at that place so much time. It waited like two or 3 seconds solid to actually get the shift up done. That was so annoying, and yeah, it wasn't the best car. The steering was a little bit off. So what I have right now is a Kia Forte, pretty much actually fully spec'd out, rear camera, which the Sentra had as well, but it feels way nicer. So even though the car on the way back actually felt normal, I just didn't want to risk it anymore, because for me the panic of somewhere stopping in the middle of the US on a road in a different country where I'm not quite sure who I should call. Okay, obviously Hertz would have been the one. Yeah, I definitely wanted the car to be replaced, and they did it without any issues. So now that's a thing of the past. Everything went out fine, even though, man, that trip was so long. I think we arrived at 11 a.m. or almost noon. So yeah, and we should have arrived according to GPS at 3:10 if I wouldn't have made all the stops and so on and didn't replace the car. So yeah, but okay. Let's talk about Manhattan. And here's one thing as a tip for everyone who wants to go there, because usually when I went to any place, when we went, for example, to the Niagara Falls, I had no prior information. I didn't check out anything. Oh, sorry, the AC is kicking in. I hope you don't really hear that too much, but I think you do. When we went to Chicago, we didn't really check anything, so I didn't know. This time I thought at least New York's a little bit of a different thing, so I should maybe check where to maybe stop. And because people at work also told me that you can't just drive in New York, you have to kind of stop before. That's what I expected. So here's my tip what you should do. That's, I think, the best thing that works out. Drive to Port Imperial. That's still in New Jersey. Stop at the ferry. There is a big parking house. You pay $20 a day. We paid $16 because we weren't there for the full day. Then take the ferry. Costs, I think, $9. Yeah, $9 to get over. Then you can go to the bus either somewhere a little bit more north, somewhere in the middle where it was Midtown, or somewhere lower. So we went Midtown. That's the cheapest option. You can leave the car for the whole day there, and you have no stress with a car, because with a car in New York, forget it. You pay like $30 an hour to park somewhere. It's very full, and especially Times Square and Midtown, and so driving is pretty much impossible if you aren't used to it. So I would not really try that. And I cannot really talk too much about what I experienced there, because it's so overwhelming the first time when you are there. I mean, Chicago was a big city. Toronto was a big city, but none of that is in comparison to what you will see maybe on Times Square or something like that. You see so many billboards. The streets are completely packed, which, for example, they weren't at all in Chicago or Toronto, even though it's great weather and so on. And I really hope you don't hear this AC, but I think you should hear it quite loud. I should have turned it off, just forgot it. Now, next thing, yeah. Overwhelming. We also saw, obviously, Great Central Terminal. We saw the Central Park. We saw the what is it? Yeah, a lot of big buildings. We actually didn't see the One World Trade Center, because at that point, when we were walking for 6 hours around in New York, my feet actually hurt, and I got a little bit of a blister, which I didn't know back then. But my feet hurt, especially since I think 2 weeks ago at work. A big metal thing, it was like 3 or 4 kilograms, out of full height with full force, dropped on my toe. And I'm not quite sure if it's broken or not, because I didn't want to go to the clinic here, because I just wanted to avoid that in the US. Insurance and everything. Obviously my company would have paid for everything, but I didn't want to. So I thought, if it's not too bad, I will just wait once I'm in Germany and get it checked. But it feels at least not good, so that hurt as well extra. But yeah, here's the thing. If you are interested, because for example, I'm not someone who wants to see the Liberty Statue, or who has too much of something just seeing it. And there are locations what you can do and should do in the US, or especially in New York, which I don't care so much, because I'm not a traveler. I pretty much never traveled in my life. But I have to say, as someone who doesn't usually appreciate kind of signature points in every city, New York is on a completely different level than anything I've seen before. It's so much bigger, so much busier. And I would actually say, if you live in New York and you work there for, I think, 5 years in such a stressful environment, I think you would age like 20 years, because it just felt so extremely overwhelming in terms of how much there is going on. It wasn't actually, since I was in Toronto and since I was already in Chicago and Detroit and so before, or Cincinnati and so on, I didn't felt so overwhelmed by just the sheer size. It's still super impressive to see all those huge buildings and you being so small in there. And when you make the pictures, it looks so. I mean, the great thing about New York is no matter which shot I did with the Mi 8, by the way, and you can check those pictures. I will post them sometimes on Instagram. Every picture you do looks spectacular, because no matter where you point it at in New York, it looks just great because the objects are there. If you are into kind of street photography and so on, so that was great. And the cool thing about the Mi 8 was actually I took so many pictures in straight walking motion, so I didn't stop. I just slowed a little bit down, and the pictures were all turning out great. And Central Park was cool. I didn't see nearly all of it. I just saw a small part of it. I would say maybe a fifth where we walked through, even if that. I think it was even smaller, because it's like over 4 kilometers long, 860 meters wide, and yeah, we were like an hour there. But it's nice to see that you can actually go on the smaller lakes there. Lake? Yeah. Do something with a boat or whatever. So yeah, cool. What was also there? Oh, AC is turning off. What was also there was at the ferry port, so the port on New York, on the New Yorker side, there was this old Navy, I don't know what ship it was, a kind of the plane carrier. What was the name? Yeah, I can't remember. A real actual one with, I think, like 15, 20 or more are actually airplanes. I wanted to see that, but then I was so kind of tired and everything that I didn't even move. I was so close. I was standing right before it, like 50 meters to the entrance. I would have seen it was like $20 to get in there, but then I just didn't, because I was exhausted after 6 hours of walking there. But that is definitely something you should see, in my opinion. Times Square you should have seen. We were on Madison Avenue, Central Station, Central Park, Broadway, and everything else. So it's definitely, this is something I think you should see once if you have any interest in culture, because it's just something on a so much bigger scale that I've experienced. I don't know about other huge cities, but after all, New York is one of the most known, most popular cities. So I get why, and I always thought, I expected it to be a completely different level from, for example, Chicago, which is after all I think the third biggest city of the USA, which was not nearly anything that impressive. If you have the chance to go to the US, if you are interested in anything like that, check New York. Obviously, there were two more cities that I would have liked to have seen, which would have been Los Angeles and San Francisco. But that's on the complete west side, and I did not have nearly the time for that. So that's that. That sums it up after almost 30 minutes. What am I looking for now for the following week? Honestly, just for it to end, because the kind of people there actually where I work at the moment, we're talking about an extension for 2 more weeks because they need more people. I hope it won't work out. I won't do it anyways, because I'm not that I'm sick of the US or something like that. Absolutely, there's nothing to do with this. I still like the country a lot. I like the people, even though I have to say Michigan is a completely different ballpark. The people in Ohio and, for example, in Kentucky seemed so nice. They were so nice and everything else. But once you move to Michigan, it seems so different. People, for example, where I work right now, have no interest in talking with us. Obviously, if you talk, they talk. But the whole nice, familiar, generous, nice, I don't know how to explain it, vibe is completely missing. They feel so I don't know, restricted and not caring so much. The streets are terrible, and you just notice the general vibe. And there is, for example, a guy who 5 years ago moved from Kentucky to Michigan, and when we asked him if he noticed the same, he said, oh yeah, people in Kentucky, where his whole family still lives, is so much nicer. People are so much more friendly and so on. Michigan is not that. So sorry for everyone who's watching this, who is maybe from Michigan. I'm not generalizing this, but yeah, if I would have to choose from all the parts that I've seen, actually, what have I seen? All the big country, the big cities that I've visited. So I was in Cincinnati, obviously. I was in, since that was so close to Florence where I was in Indianapolis, I was in Chicago. We drove past Cleveland, weren't quite there. Obviously New York, Toronto in Canada, obviously, Louisville, Lexington, and a few smaller ones. But if I would have to choose, if obviously now the work environment and the job and money and everything is not an option, but just where you live, based on from what I know, Kentucky I think is the way to go. It felt very nice in terms of the environment, and felt very nice in terms of the people. The location, at least in Florence, was way better spread out, because if you are in the center of Florence where I was and you drive 2 miles, no matter in which direction, this kind of perimeter, you have so many, you have pretty much everything you need. You have enough restaurants, enough shopping malls, whatever you need. You need not ever to go outside of that, which is super convenient, because here in Michigan, where I am right now in Plymouth, Walmart is 10 kilometers away. Kroger is quite close with 2, but Mayer is like 5. And if you want to eat something maybe a little bit that's not Wendy's or that's not McDonald's, you have to drive further away. So it's definitely not quite as compact and so on. But that was my opinion. But like I said, the US, I think, is still, I'm gonna have to say, a great country. If I would have the same kind of working conditions, I would actually think about moving, because I like it a lot. The reason why I want to go, obviously, is that I'm not that I have the need to go back to Germany, but I just want to be gone out of the hotels. Living 2 months in a hotel, actually I think it's the 4th one by now. I don't have my known stuff. I don't have my electronics, my TV, and even though I don't really use it so much, but I couldn't make any videos for over like almost 3 months by now. Once I'm back, it's like then 2 months and 3 weeks or so. I didn't really make proper videos the way I usually do it, and I'm missing YouTube, definitely. I was kind of out of the game. It did hurt the channel quite a lot. I think my growth back before I stopped actually doing videos regularly, when I went to the trip, was at my peak. I was at like 4,500 new subscribers, and I'm back to like a little over 1,000. My views were cut in half, my subs were cut in a third or fourth, my comments got cut in, I think, a 10th, I would say, and the whole interaction. So channel definitely got a big nick in it. I hope to be able to recover. Maybe it's also the right chance though for a channel 2.0, which actually should have been by 5.0 by now, but I would call it just right now 2.0 instead of anything from before, because I so many times made videos, changes this, changes that, and nothing really changed, and that's why I actually don't want to call it 2.0, because not too much is changing. It's the whole general vibe. Maybe I feel a little bit different, or I seem different. I don't know. Don't want to make any promises that I can't deliver, and lighting isn't perfect here because the window is here and this is in the dark. Blah, blah, blah. Video 33 minutes long, and impossible, I think, for me to upload since the Wi-Fi here. This is actually a terrible thing. I was 3 weeks here, or by now 2 weeks, but I will be 3 weeks here in this hotel. And since the first day, especially the first week, I think 7 days in a row, AT&T was here every single day, stationed with 3 cars trying to fix the Wi-Fi here or the internet in the hotel. They didn't get it done. So if it works, I get like 50 to 70 Mbit down, like 30 up, but that's like maybe 5% at best a day, because it's so unreliable. I can maybe 5-6 seconds use it, and then it doesn't work for a few minutes. Maybe use it a minute, then use it but a minute is actually stretching a little bit, because usually it doesn't work. So I guess maybe in times where not many people are using it, it works okay by now, but it's terrible. It's now 1 p.m. and I didn't really have access to internet today, so I'm not quite sure when I will be actually able to upload this stinking video. And it was way too long, and it will get way more than the kind of usual for my videos downvotes, even though I never quite understood that, why the videos in the US got more dislikes in general. Does not matter. So 34 minutes. I hope the video actually will turn out okay, because the internet was so bad that I actually thought it was the system, because the Wi-Fi on this laptop is not good. I have quite a halfway decent connection and also connectivity with my phone, But with this laptop, nah, not so much. So I thought it's the system completely deleted everything, forgot to back up my documents folder with all my files that I needed to get back to have this laptop running with OBS and such. So I did not have that, and I, for example, needed like almost an hour just to get OBS back again, because it did not really load more than like 10K per second or so. But I digress. But I should actually call these videos digressions, because it's nothing else than just digressing. Okay, I hope it was interesting enough for you. Call it a podcast, call it whatever you want. And yes, it was pretty much staring at me for 35 minutes straight. But no one watches that anyways for this long, so it does not really matter. Okay, I'm gonna stop this. Until next time, bye.